Alrighty, so I'm currently at a hotel here in Minnesota because when I did my final review of the regular season, at the end I did mention I was going to go to Minnesota for a couple of days and also going to Chicago too. But the good news is I am going to be back at home before the first round of the playoff is going to happen. I'm not going to be back home though in time when the wild card round is going to happen, but I'll still try to do the review of both of those games or maybe do individual review too because I think it's better for me to separate those two wild card round, both the East and the Western Conference, in a separate video. But what this video is all about is a video that I do every single year after the regular season ends. It's time to look back at my terrible prediction I made in the beginning of the year. And it feels like every season there's always tends to be a prediction that I got absolutely wrong. And I can't wait to look at the Western Conference because I'm pretty much everyone here in the beginning of the season probably predicted that St. Louis was going to finish low in the standings, and they end up finish at the top of the standings. But at least in this video today, I'll look at the Eastern Conference, and we start off at number 15, where I predicted that the Chicago Fire was going to finish with the worst record in the Eastern Conference. Now, the good news is they didn't finish with the worst record, but they kind of had a very Chicago Fire-esque kind of season. A season where it's kind of like been the case for the past couple of seasons. A team that kind of had some good run of form in the middle of the season, gave their fans some hope that this maybe is finally the year that the Chicago Fire make the playoffs for the first time since 2017, and then the usual collapse in September and into October, and not to mention on decision day in a pivotal game that is a chance for them to finally get over the hump and make it back to the playoffs. It was a no-show for them. So yeah, it ended up being a 13th place finish, which is easily as a more frustrating finish than when I predicted that the finish in 15. I mean, I didn't think they play as bad as I thought that they were going to be, but the fact that they had a very Chicago Fire-esque season is going to drive every Chicago Fire fans absolutely nuts. Then I predicted that Wayne Rooney DC team was going to finish in 14, and I wasn't that far off from this one either. They finished in 12th, and really, I feel like this season for DC kind of played out what I said in the prediction video, where I think this is going to be kind of a very inconsistent and kind of boom or bust kind of season for DC, where there's going to be times where they're going to be good because of the players that they have, but then there's also times where it turns out to be a bit of a bust. Now, to be fair, some of the players that they got in the offseason turns out to be a bit of a boom. Christian Benteke was very good, and Mateus Click was very good too. But again, inconsistency kind of killed them, which was something I thought that was going to be a problem for Wayne Rooney team, and because of that, they sinked down to 12 plays. I mean, they at least was kind of in playoff contention, and they can at least say that they might be the only team in MLS history to be able to be above the red line heading into decision day, but has an E next to their name because they're not playing on decision day, and whatever resort happened, they'll still get eliminated and drop down below the red line. Then I said Inter Miami was going to finish 13, and again, this one I wasn't far off with this one either. They actually finished one spot lower. Now, again, many people predicted that Inter Miami was going to make it to the playoffs because of Messi and his company was there. But obviously, I think one thing that people forgot is that when we do get to some of these Inter Miami games that are going to be happening during the international break when Messi is not going to be available, can they pick up the slack? Well, the answer is no, and it also doesn't help that Messi actually got injured, and that I'm pretty sure Tata Martino will have huge regret after that TFC game where Messi, of course, was injured in that game, and same goes for Jordi Alba. And while Messi was able to return to this team by the end of the season, Alba wasn't able to do so. And yeah, it's pretty clear that Tata Martino was just playing them just because you want to bring Messi to the game just to kind of have the fans to see him. I mean, obviously the people that attend those Miami games and those games that involving Miami whenever they go on the road. They pay a lot of money to see Messi, but at the same time, I also think that maybe Tata Martino realized that, and that he doesn't realize that you don't really need to play Messi, especially if he is actually hurt, and that that game really killed their playoff chances to a point where they just couldn't get anywhere higher in the standings. They eventually did finish in 13th position, and that hole that they had to overcome was just a little bit too much. Then in 12th place, I said Toronto FC was going to finish that, and well, not only they didn't finish there, but this turns out to be the worst season in TFC history. I mean, this it's a bad season for TFC when I said that. Consider they had some bad season in their beginning time when they came into the league, but my word, this was just an absolute disastrous season. You want to talk about a team that had all their signings turn out to be bust and all the dramas that was going on. TFC basically had all of that. I mean, there's a reason why they are going to drop a nuke this this off season. There's going to be a lot of change under John Herman, but even then, I thought that in the beginning of the season they're a team that I think will still be good enough to compete for the playoffs, but they're going to fall short. And yeah, they didn't even do that because of all the injuries and also the problem on and off the field, especially with the whole ordeal between Bernadeschi and Insigne. Then we go to 11th, where I said Nashville was going to finish that. And, well, they actually finished in 7th place. And I'll tell you what, this prediction would have been really bad if Nashville would have continued that good form that they had in the beginning of the year and also carried that amazing run that they had in the Leeds Cup final into the regular season because yeah, early on there was a lot of people saying Nashville could be an MLS Cup contender out of the East, and yeah, things have definitely not worked out for them. And I think from what we saw, at least in the last month, is kind of what I thought Nashville was going to have problem. What happened if Hani Mukhtar goes cold? And what happened if some of their supporter cast doesn't pick up the slack? And yeah, those supporter cast doesn't pick up the slack. Fafa Pico, his goal streak kind of run into the dry. I think he's kind of having a CJ Sapong kind of and now. But despite that, they did still made it to the playoffs because they just had so many points in the beginning where they had a massive collapse to miss out on the playoffs. And while they didn't play very well, it wasn't a massive collapse. And yeah, they end up finish a lot higher than what I thought it was. I mean, I thought that this season Nashville might miss out mainly because I think teams would eventually figure out that the way to play Nashville is you let them have all the ball and hope that Hani Mukhtar doesn't go nuclear. And if you can make sure that they have the ball and Hani Mukhtar is being shut down, you basically just solve Nashville SC. And I think more teams kind of figure that out as the season goes along. But that was definitely not the case in the beginning of the year. They were definitely proving me wrong in terms of how well they were playing in the beginning of the year. Then I said Atlanta United was gonna just miss out on the playoffs, and well, they actually end up making the playoffs in sixth position. But I will say that some of the things I saw Atlanta doing the season kind of is what I thought it was gonna happen when I make that prediction video. I thought that some of these players that they signed the offseason isn't really going to turn out well, but I think I might have also said that Thiago Mata could potentially become a flop, and yeah, that definitely was not a great that prediction definitely aged well, didn't it? He turns out to be having an absolute amazing season, a season that could potentially be an MVP worthy of a season if it wasn't for another Argentine in Cincinnati that is doing very well in that number 10 spot. But yeah, Atlanta, credit to them. They eventually did ride the ship, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they finally got those transfer right. I mean, as much as we talk about Armada being a big help for this team, when you look at some of the transfer business, even especially in the summer one, I mean, Yakimakis has definitely lived up to everything that they hoped that he was. He's just as well, I wouldn't say he's just as good as a Joseph Martinez replacement because what Joseph Martinez does was just insane. But Yakimakis definitely is not a huge down where he turns out to be that number 9 that Atlanta finally got after Martinez left this team, but still, because they had a relatively good run, they were able to get into playoffs. And now it looks like this Atlanta team, especially in the latter month, it seems like they look like the old Atlanta. And dare I say that, those three words, I know I don't want to say it, but I kind of had to say it just for the sake of this. Maybe Atlanta is indeed back. Then we go into those teams that I predicted that is going to finish in the wild card spot. So I predicted Montreal was going to finish in ninth place, and my goodness, I would have got this prediction spot on if the Red Bulls didn't score that winning goal and if John Token didn't bury that penalty to propel the Red Bulls to make it to the playoffs because Montreal was in ninth spot before that happened. But unfortunately, they end up finishing in 10th position. And I might as well just kind of put Charlotte in that too because I predicted Charlotte to finish eighth place, and they end up finishing in ninth place because if it wasn't for the game where the Red Bulls got that winning goal in the 93rd minute from the penalty spot from John Tolkien, this would literally be the matchup that we're gonna have in the Eastern Conference wildcard round. Like I would be an absolute genius in terms of predicting what the wildcard round is in the Eastern Conference. I mean, hey, some of my prediction I know has been bad, but at least I can say that the fact that I was able to predict the wild card matchup in the beginning of the season and it almost or it actually happened, then I would say that I'm just an absolute prediction genius. But unfortunately, no, because John Tolkien had to ruin, because the Red Bulls got to keep their streak alive, and that's why that unfortunately, for Montreal, they missed out on that, and for Charlotte, they still made it, but now they don't get to host the playoff game, and they finish in ninth position. At least they make it to the playoffs. I mean, I thought Charlotte was going to be kind of the team that would somehow get enough to go over the line to make it to the playoffs. Now, the way that they've been playing throughout the season, it hasn't been pretty, but I've said in the beginning of the season they would be stay in playoff contention, and they definitely was as the season goes along. They actually had a relatively nice run near the end of the season to make sure that they do have a chance to make it to the playoffs, and they do in that final game of the season. Then I predicted New England was going to finish in seventh place, and it turns out they finished in fifth place, but it could have been a lot higher. I mean, everything was looking well for the Revs early, but then the Bruce Arena thing happened, and I know that in the earlier in this season I've talked about how maybe the Rams were going to take a step back because some of the signings that they made hasn't really been that impressive, but that at least early on they kind of proved me right. It looked like New England was ready to challenge again, but the Bruce Arena saga changed everything. I mean, and not to mention injuries started to pile up. This was probably one of the most injury cursed team in the Eastern Conference this season. Like literally, almost all their players either spent time on the IR or they're pretty much done for the season because of a torn ACL, and because of that, in a season where New England could have easily finished higher in the standings, they end up finishing in fifth place. Though, as I said before, I didn't predict that they were going to have an absolute outfall fall in terms of off the field with the whole Bruce Arena situation. Like nobody would have predicted that was going to be. Bruce Arena is such a legendary head coach, and now I've heard that it seems like he potentially could get the DC United gig as he's one of the candidate there. And I'm really hoping that he gets another chance because I know it's an ugly season. To this day, we still don't know what the exact situation is with the whole situation, and I'm getting to a point where I'm thinking we probably will never know what that situation happened behind the scenes. Then I said NYCFC was going to finish in sixth place, and this is kind of one of my first bad prediction that I made. Well, actually, the Nashville one was pretty bad, at least in the beginning of the year, but at least from what I kind of said about how Nashville was, kind of came true as the season goes along. I can't say the same thing about NYCFC. I mean, I knew they were going to go for a regression, and I knew they were going to go for a retool, but even then, I didn't think they were going to be as bad as they've been throughout out the season. And also, I think that, I mentioned as much as they were very shorthanded, you would assume this City Football Group is going to start signing players and start to get this team much stronger, right? Well, the problem is they eventually did sign players, but it was way too late. I mean, it was way too late for them to make any runs whatsoever, and then they lose some key games down the stretch to keep them in the playoff contention. And as a result, in a year where it was kind of a retool kind of year, hope that NYCFC was still going to be good. I mean, when you look at the squad, you would think that it still should be good enough to compete for playoffs, even though they were a little shorthanded in the beginning of the year, and it was not the case whatsoever. Goal scoring was a huge problem for this team from the beginning of the season, and it kind of continued throughout the season too. Then I said Orlando City was going to finish in fifth place because I thought Orlando City was going to have one of those years where it's kind of inconsistent. It seems like they're going to just get into the playoffs, but they're probably going to knocked out in the first round. Well, that's another prediction that might have ended pretty badly because they actually finished second in the Western Conference. And what I said in the beginning of the year was kind of true, at least for the first half of the season. And then the second half of the season, and after the Leeds Cup is over, happened. I mean, this team just blossomed to a team where this is probably the best Orlando City team I've ever seen. Even better when Oscar Pereira took over this team a couple of years ago when they finished in fourth place and even win a playoff game. And I think this team is going to be an absolute menace in the playoffs. I mean, I know the Eastern Conference playoffs, as I mentioned, it's going to be a bloodbath, but Orlando City could definitely overcome that and potentially win the East because they're just that good right now. They're just red hot right now. This was something I definitely didn't expect it to see from the Lions, especially from what we saw in the first half of the season. But credit has to do to what Oscar has done to this team and all those players that they've signed finally hits his stride. I mean, I did say that eventually it was going to work, but I didn't think it was going to take that long to a point where now it finally hits, and now you start to see the potential that this Orlando City team could be. And I said Columbus was going to finish in fourth position. Guess what? I got that one wrong. I was about to say that I got that one right until I realized I look at the standings, and they actually finished in third position. Yeah, they were close to finish in fourth. I mean, if Philly didn't lose their final game, I would have got this prediction right. But I did say that in the beginning of the year that I think they're going to have a decent season, and I love what Wilfred Nancy done to the to what Montreal has done. He's going to bring that to Columbus, and he did exactly that. Now, I didn't think that Lucas Ariel was going to be sold off in the middle of the season, and Cucho Hernandez is basically now the man for this crew team. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened. And not to mention, I didn't expect them getting Diego Rossi in the beginning of the year. He's also provided some pivotal moment. And also, Christian Ramirez decided to bring back his old Minnesota United days, being a lethal goal scorer too. So yeah, in the end, I mean, as I said about Orlando, Columbus is definitely a team that I think you definitely do not want to play. Now, the one thing that I think I said in the beginning of the year that I had some concern that maybe turns out to be true is the defense. The defense is going to be one thing that I think is going to be still a big concern for this Columbus team. But still, when you have such an entertaining kind of team like what Wilfred Nancy has done to this Columbus team, it doesn't really matter in the defensive end until they maybe get into a close game, and that could be an interesting situation. Then I said the New York Red Bulls was going to finish in third place, and this is also another prediction that I got it wrong. But the Red Bulls did make it to the playoffs. But man, remember how I said in the beginning of the year that this was probably the best Red Bulls team that they assembled since when they won the Supporter Shield back in 2018? Oh boy, I was so wrong about this one. I mean, it turns out to be a season of just endless frustration for the Red Bulls, but because this is the Red Bulls and somehow they still were able to sneak into the playoffs, that is exactly what happened here. I mean, don't ask me, Red Bulls fan, how in the world did they sneak into the playoffs once again and keep that streak alive despite having no sense of attack whatsoever on this team, and more times than not, their defense kind of carried this team more nights than not. But yeah, they made it to the playoffs. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to do anything in the playoffs, but hey, they at least keep that playoff streak alive. But I predicted them in the beginning of the season of being a very dynamic team. So, oh boy, I was completely wrong. And again, part of that has to do with losing Lewis Morgan pretty much for the entire season. I mean, he did came back, but he immediately went back to the IR after he came back in one of the game once he came back from injury. And yeah, some of those key signings that they have. I mean, Dante Van Zero, I thought he was going to be the perfect replacement for Bradley Ray Phillips, and I couldn't be more wrong about that. I mean, it's been a miserable season for him, and not to mention have some off the field situation with the whole racial remark that we saw during the season. Then I said FC Cincinnati was going to finish in second place. They did one better. They finished first place. And I did say that, in the beginning of the year, my prediction is this is basically between two teams that pretty much have the exact same style and come from the with coaching staff that come the exact same coaching branch from the Philadelphia Union, because a lot of the coaching staff, especially Pat Nolan and even the GM Chris Albright, comes from the Philadelphia Union, and they basically implement a very similar style with FC Cincinnati. So it was kind of a battle between who exactly is going to win the East and potentially win the Supporter Shield. turns out Cincinnati was able to best the master. And again, the way that they play really reminds me of how Jim Curtin was able to win the Supporters Shield for the Union back in 2020, and it's no surprise that it's worked out very well for the Cincinnati team for them to win the Supporters Shield and win their first ever trophy in franchise history. And then finally, I said that the Philadelphia Union was going to finish first. I think this would have been the third straight year that the Union would have finished at the top of the Eastern Conference. Didn't happen. They did finish in fourth position. Part of that is the Concacaf Champions League and how they had to sacrifice some games, and that they I will say that the Union, in terms of how they did in the regular season, they really didn't play as well as they did last year, but that doesn't really matter. I mean, what matters for this Union team is winning MLS Cup, and that maybe some of these players are just kind of saving that energy and knowing that now it's really the season for the Philadelphia Union. The regular season doesn't really matter. All that matters is now the postseason, and this will really judge whether or not if the Union is going to have a good year or not. So yeah, it should be interesting thing to see how they do. Even though the bad news for the Union is that since they did finish lower than I thought that they would, they're not going to have home field advantage throughout this playoffs. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking back at some of the prediction that I made in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to be doing the Western Conference version a little bit later, either later tonight or maybe tomorrow. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this? And again, this is the reason why I said before that I decided to not do a prediction video for the playoffs. Well, actually, that's going to be a video that will be uploaded tomorrow that will explain why I'm not going to do fill out the bracket. So kind of a little spoiler alert that is the case. Although it's not really a spoiler when I kind of mentioned that also in the review of that decision day game for the Western Conference. But yeah, it just shows you that, yeah, I'm not really the best in terms of prediction. I didn't even get any of them right. I actually thought that I was going to get one right. I mean, I came close with some of them, but the fact that I didn't get anyone right, yeah, I wonder how the West in conferences. I mean, I have not had a year of me doing prediction where I got every single prediction wrong, but it could be potentially that if I look at the Western Conference and look back at my Western Conference position in the beginning of the year and see how it actually end up. And like I said, from what I said beginning, spoiler alert, it's probably not good, especially the team that finished first place. Yeah, I picked them. I mean, I didn't pick them as low as they did as some people would say, but we'll talk more about that once we do the Western Conference version of this kind of video. But like I said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.